Hi guys, thanks for watching my video. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe. 50 years after the dramatically successful First Crusade, Europe was once again preparing itself for holy war. Christian Crusader states in the East, which had been established in the aftermath of the First Crusade, were coming under attack. This is the story of the Second Crusade. In 1144, the Crusader state of Edessa came under attack by the increasingly powerful Turkish ruler Zengi. In the winter of that year, Zengi besieged the city, demanding its surrender by the Christian inhabitants before he launched his assault, and it wasn't long before Edessa fell into his hands. On breaching the city, the Turks wreaked havoc, killing young and old alike. This was a bitter blow for Christianity. Word of the disaster soon reached the ears of Pope Eugenius III, and he called for a new crusade. In December 1145, he wrote to King Louis VII of France, imploring him to take the cross. In return, Louis and whoever joined him were promised full remission of their sins. Louis took the cross in March 1146, having already held discussions with his nobility about the venture the previous Christmas. Preparations were begun for the long and difficult journey ahead. One of the most important men in recruiting participants for the crusade was Bernard of Clairvaux, one of the most significant men of his age. Bernard was overwhelmingly successful in his mission as he preached not only across France but also in Germany and the Low Countries. Men and women, young and old, greeted his message with tremendous enthusiasm. Bernard even managed to convince the King of Germany, Conrad III, to join the expedition. The crusade was gathering momentum, but, as with the First Crusade, things took a dark and truly dreadful and tragic turn. Strictly against Bernard's message, innocent communities of Jewish people were brutally attacked. Jews were killed in violent uprisings in France and Germany. In a town called Würzburg, a brutal murder of a man, with his body hacked to pieces, was blamed on the Jews, completely without evidence. Men, women, and children were murdered indiscriminately. In 1147, a different type of crusade, although intertwined with the Second Crusade, took place as men from Germany, with the approval of Bernard of Clairvaux, launched an expedition to Christianize the pagan Slavs. This is known as the Wendish Crusade and is the beginning of what is known as the Northern Crusades, as parts of Europe remained stubbornly pagan. Also in 1147, men from England, France, and the Low Countries took part in the siege of Lisbon. Their intended destination had been the east, but they were diverted towards Portugal. Centuries earlier, the Iberian Peninsula had been the subject of Islamic conquest, but now the Christian fightback in Iberia was well and truly underway, and the siege of Lisbon proved to be the most notable success for Christianity in its wars against Islam in the late 1140s. On a hot June day, Louis VII would finally begin his journey. Among those travelling with him was his wife, the now infamous Eleanor of Aquitaine. Anticipation was high, but Louis appeared to be in no particular hurry. At Saint Denis, he dined with some monks, as members of his retinue were practically fainting from heat exhaustion, which was exacerbated by their high emotions. Finally, Louis departed, lagging not too far behind Conrad III, who would take ship at Regensburg. Conrad would arrive at Constantinople, greeted by the Byzantine Emperor Manuel I Komnenos. Although Manuel greeted Conrad warmly, there would have been high suspicion of the Crusaders' intentions. During their journey, and having entered Byzantine territory, the Crusaders had caused something of a disturbance by plundering. Manuel sent out an army to keep an eye on them, and a battle broke out, with the Byzantines besting the Crusaders, killing a number of Westerners. Conrad would have been glad to have reached Constantinople, but tensions would certainly have existed. Manuel, when he heard of Conrad's intentions to fight the Saracen enemy, was highly unconvinced by the plan. He warned his counterpart that the Crusaders were heading into not only hostile territory, but also into a terrain that was harsh and unforgiving. But Conrad remained steadfast in his determination to wage this holy war, and the emperor provided him with ships and weaponry. However, it was not long before Conrad and his men were in tremendous difficulty. The Crusaders, after leaving Constantinople, had travelled to Nicaea, where they rested for 3 days. They then came to a Muslim city called Laodicea, which they intended to capture, but soon they succumbed to devastating thirst and hunger. The Muslims, on seeing their enemies' fragility, fell upon them without mercy, killing and enslaving huge numbers. The arrival of Louis did nothing to change the momentum, as his army also suffered devastating losses. On hearing of the Crusaders' plight, Manuel wrote to Conrad, urging him to return to Constantinople. With little other option, Conrad accepted the offer. In March 1148, Louis and his wife Eleanor arrived in northern Syria, with the French king intent on going to Jerusalem. At St. Simeon, Louis was greeted by Prince Raymond of Antioch, who happened to be Eleanor's uncle. Raymond, in the arrival of the Crusaders, saw an opportunity to expand his own power by capturing neighbouring cities, including Aleppo. However, Louis was absolutely hell-bent on continuing on to Jerusalem, and he would not be diverted from that. Frustrated in his plans, Raymond turned against the French king, supposedly plotting against him, and rumours even began to circulate that he had an affair with Eleanor. Louis became aware of these rumours, and his marriage to Eleanor would go into rapid decline in the years to come. In the summer of 1148, Louis and Conrad held a council with the King of Jerusalem, Baldwin III, in which the decision was taken to go to Damascus and try and capture the city. This would prove to be a total failure, as huge numbers of Crusaders were killed in the effort. Various explanations for the failure were concocted, with one chronicler blaming the Templar Knights, whom he accused of accepting bribes from the Muslims. With food and supplies running low, the decision was taken by the leaders of the crusading army to return home after the failure to take Damascus. The Second Crusade had proved to be a total disaster.